The Porsche 911, pronounced 911 or in German, 911, is a two-door 2+2 high rear-engine sports car introduced in September 1964 by Porsche AG of Stuttgart, Germany. It has a rear-mounted flat-six engine and originally a torsion bar suspension. The car has been continuously enhanced through the years, but the basic concept has remained unchanged. The engines were air-cooled until the introduction of the 996 series in 1998. The 911 has been raced extensively by private and factory teams, in a variety of classes. It is among the most successful competition cars. In the mid-1970s, the naturally aspirated 911 Carrera RSR won World Championship races including Targa Florio and the 24 Hours of Daytona. The 911-derived 935 Turbos also won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1979. Porsche won the World Championship for makes in 1976, 1977, 1978, and 1979 with 911-derived models. In a 1999 poll to determine the car of the century, the 911 was fifth. It is one of two in the top five that had remained continuously in production. The original Beetle remained in production until 2003. The 1 millionth example was manufactured in May 2017 and is in the company's permanent collection. Although Porsche has used internal code numbers for each series of the 911, all models have been marketed and sold as 911s. The model series and associated internal codes are as follows: 911, 1964A, 1989, 930, 1975A, 1989. The turbocharged version 964, 1989A, 1994, 993, 1995A, 1998. The last air-cooled 911 996, 1999A, 2004, all new body and water-cooled engines 997, 2005A, 2012, 991, 2012A, 2019, all new body 992, 2019A, a series letter is used by Porsche to indicate the revision for production cars. Usually on an annual basis. 911s have also been categorized into families based on body styles or engine enhancements. 911 Carrera, including the Carrera, Carrera S, Carrera 4, Carrera 4S, Carrera GTS, Carrera 4 GTS, and Carrera T, all are available as cabriolets except the Carrera T. 911 Targa, including the Targa 4, Targa 4S, and Targa 4 GTS. 911 Turbo, including the Turbo, and Turbo S, all are available as cabriolets. GT3/GT3 RS, a track-focused version of the 911 Carrera with a naturally aspirated engine and rear-wheel drive. No cabriolet variant has ever been produced to date. A Grand Touring version featuring comfort-oriented options is called the GT3 Touring and is available for the 991 and 992 generations. GT2/GT2 RS, the highest performance derivative, a track-focused version based on the Turbo with rear-wheel drive. No cabriolet version has ever been produced to date. Now available as an RS, Rennsport, model only. The 911 traces its roots to sketches drawn by Ferdinand Butzi Porsche in 1959. The Porsche 911 was developed as a more powerful, larger, and more comfortable replacement for the 356. The company's first model. The new car made its public debut at the 1963 Frankfurt Motor Show, German, International Automobilausstellung. The car was developed with the proof-of-concept twin-fan Type 745 flat-six engine, but the car presented at the Auto Show had a non-operational mock-up of the single-fan 901 engine, receiving a working unit in February 1964. It originally was designated as the Porsche 901, 901 being its internal project number. A total of 82 cars were built which were badged as 901s. However, French automobile manufacturer Peugeot protested because in France it had exclusive rights to car names formed by 3 numbers with a 0 in the middle. Instead of selling the new model with a different name in France, Porsche changed the name to 911. Internally, the car's part numbers carried on the prefix 901 for years. Production began in September 1964, with the first 911s exported to the U.S. in February 1965. The first models of the 911 had a rear-mounted 130 horsepower, 97 kilowatts, Type 901 flat-six engine. In the Boxer configuration like the 356, the engine is air-cooled and displaces 1,991 cc, 2.0 liters, as compared to the 356's 4-cylinder, 1,582 cc, 1.6 liters, unit. The car had 4 seats although the rear seats were small, thus it is usually called a 2+2 rather than a 4-seater. The 356 was also 2+2. A 4 or 5-speed Type 901 manual transmission was available. The styling was largely penned by Ferdinand Butzi Porsche, son of Ferdinand Ferry Porsche. Butzi Porsche initially came up with a notchback design with proper space for seating 2 rear passengers, but Ferry Porsche insisted that the 356's successor was to use its fastback styling. 7 prototypes were built based on Butzi Porsche's original design and were internally called the Porsche 754 T7. Erwin Komenda, the leader of the Porsche car body construction department who initially objected, was also involved later in the design. Production of the 356 ended in 1965, but there was still a market for a 4-cylinder car, particularly in the U.S. The 912, introduced in the same year, served as a direct replacement, offering the detuned version of 356 SE's 4-cylinder, 1,582 cc, 1.6 liters, 90 horsepower, 67 kilowatts, 91 PS, Boxer 4 Type 616-36 engine. Inside the 911 bodywork with Type 901 4-speed manual transmission. A 5-speed manual transmission was optional. In 1966, Porsche introduced the more powerful 911S with the Type 901-02 engine having a power output of 160 PS, 120 kilowatts, 160 horsepower, forged aluminum alloy wheels from Fussfilch, with the 5-spoke design, were offered for the first time. In motorsport at the same time, the engine was developed into the Type 901-20 and was installed in the mid-engine 904 and 906 with an increased power output of 210 PS, 150 kilowatts, 210 horsepower, as well as fuel-injected Type 901-21 installed in later variants of the 906 and 910 with a power output of 220 PS, 160 kilowatts, 220 horsepower. In August 1967, the A-Series went into production with dual brake circuits and widened, 5.5 joules-15, wheels still fitted with Pirelli's Encerato 165 HR15 CA67 tires, and the previously standard gasoline-burning heater became optional. The Targa, meaning plate in Italian, version was introduced. The Targa had a stainless steel-clad roll bar, as automakers believed that proposed rollover safety requirements by the U.S. National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, would make it difficult for fully open convertibles to meet regulations for sale in the U.S., an important market for the 911. The name Targa came from the Targa Florio sports car road race in Sicily, Italy, in which Porsche had several victories until 1973. The last win in the subsequently discontinued event was scored with the 911 Carrera RS against prototypes entered by Ferrari and Alfa Romeo. The road-going Targa was equipped with a removable roof panel and a removable plastic rear window, although a fixed-glass version was offered in 1968. The 110 PS, 81 kilowatts, 110 horsepower 911T was also launched in 1967 with the Type 901-03 engine. The 130 PS, 96 kilowatts, 130 horsepower model was renamed the 911 liters with a Type 900-106 engine and ventilated front disc brakes. The brakes had been introduced on the previous 911S. The 911R with 900-122 engine had a limited production, 20 in all, as this was a lightweight racing version with thin fiberglass reinforced plastic doors, a magnesium crankcase, twin overhead camshafts, and a power output of 210 PS, 150 kilowatts 210 horsepower, a clutchless semi-automatic Sportomatic model, composed of a torque converter, an automatic clutch, and the 4-speed transmission was added in the autumn of 1967. It was cancelled after the 1980 model year partly because of the elimination of a forward gear to make it a 3-speed. The B-Series went into production in August 1968, replacing the 911 liters model with the 911E with fuel injection. It remained in production until July 1969. The 911E gained 185/70 VR15 Pirelli Cinturato CN36, and 6 joules-15 wheels. The C-Series was introduced in August 1969 with an enlarged 2.2-liter engine. 84mm bore x 66mm stroke. The wheelbase for all 911 and 912 models was increased from 2,211 2,268mm, 87.0 89.3 in, to help as a remedy to the car's nervous handling at the limit. The overall length of the car did not change, but the rear wheels were relocated further back. Fuel injection arrived for the 911S. 900-1/10 engine, and a new middle model, the 911E, 900-109 engine. The D-Series was produced from August 1970 to July 1971. The 2.2-liter 911E, C and D Series, had a lower power output of the 911-01 engine, 155 PS, 114 kilowatts 153 horsepower. At 6,200 revolutions per minute, compared to the 911S Type 911-02, 180 PS, 130 kilowatts 180 horsepower, at 6,500 revolutions per minute, but 911E was quicker in acceleration up to 160 kilometers per hour, 99 miles per hour. The E-Series for the 1972-1973 model years, August 1971 to July 1972 production, consisted of the same models, but with a new, larger 2,341 cc, 2.3 liters, engine. This is known as the 2.4 liters engine, despite its displacement being closer to 2.3 liters. The 911E, Type 911-52 engine, and 911S, Type 911-53, used Bosch mechanical fuel injection, MFI, in all markets. For 1972 the 911T, Type 911-57, was carbureted, except in the US and some Asian markets where the 911T also came with MFI, mechanical fuel injection, Type 911-51 engine, with power increase over European models, 130 horsepower to 140 horsepower, commonly known as a 911T/E. With power and torque increase, the 2.4-liter cars also got a newer, stronger transmission, identified by its Porsche type number 915. Derived from the transmission in the 908 race car, the 915 did away with the 901 transmission's dogleg style first gear arrangement, opting for a traditional H pattern with first gear up to the left, second gear underneath first, etc. The E-Series had the unusual oil filler behind the right side door, with the dry sump oil tank relocated from behind the right rear wheel to the front of it in an attempt to move the center of gravity slightly forward for better handling. An extra oil filler inspection flap was located on the rear wing. For this reason, it became known as an oil clapper, L-clap or Virtual 1/4R, fourth door. The F-Series, August 1972 to July 1973 production, moved the oil tank back to the original behind-the-wheel location. This change was in response to complaints that gas station attendants often filled gasoline into the oil tank. In January 1973, US 911TS were switched to the new K-Jetronic SIS, continuous fuel injection, system from Bosch on the Type 911-91 engine. 911S models also gained a small spoiler under the front bumper to improve high-speed stability. The cars weighed 1,050 kilograms, 2,310 pounds. The 911 Street was produced in small numbers for racing. The production run for the Street lasted from 1970 to 1971. The cars were available with engines of either 1,987 cc, 2.0 liters, or 2,404 ccs, 2.4 liters, displacement, having a power output of 270 PS, 200 kilowatts, 270 horsepower. At 8,000 revolutions per minute. Weight was down to 960 kilograms, 2,120 pounds. The cars had success at the Daytona 6 hours, the Sebring 12 hours, the 1,000 kilometers Nürburgring, and the Targa Florio. RS stands for Rennsport in German, meaning race sport. The Carrera name was reintroduced from the 356 Carrera, which was named after Porsche's class victories in the Carrera Panamericana races in Mexico in the 1950s. The RS was developed to meet motorsport homologation requirements. Compared to a standard 911S, the Carrera 2.7 RS had a larger engine, 2,687 ccs, developing 210 PS, 150 kilowatts, 210 horsepower, with Bosch, Kugelfisser, mechanical fuel injection, revised and stiffened suspension, a ducktail rear spoiler, larger brakes, wider rear wheels, and rear fenders, to fit 185/70 VR15 to 15/60 VR15 Pirelli Cinturato C and 36 tires. In RS touring format weighed 1,075 kilograms, 2,370 pounds. In sport lightweight form it was about 100 kilograms, 220 pounds, lighter, the saving coming from thin-gauge steel used for parts of the body shell and also the use of thinner glass. In total, 1,580 units were made, and qualified for the FIA Group 4 class. 49 Carrera RSR cars were built with 2,808 ccs, 2.8 liters, engines rated at 300 PS, 220 kilowatts, 300 horsepower. For the 1974 IROC Championship, which started in December 1973, 1973 Carrera RSR models were fitted with a 3.0 engine and a flat whale tail in place of the ducktail spoiler along with wide body panels and large tires. In 1974, Porsche developed the Carrera RS 3.0 with mechanical fuel injection rated as 230 PS, 170 kilowatts, 230 horsepower. Its price was almost twice that of the 2.7 RS, but it offered racing capability. The chassis was largely similar to that of the 1973 Carrera RSR and the braking system was from the 917 racing car. The use of thinner metal plate panels and a minimalist interior enabled its weight to be reduced to around 900 kilograms. 2,000 pounds. The Carrera RSR 3.0 was sold to racing teams and scored wins in several major sports car races of the mid-1970s. Also, a prototype Carrera RSR Turbo, with a 2.1-liter engine due to a 1.4x equivalency formula, came second at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1974 and won several major races. A significant event in that its engine would form the basis of many future Porsche attempts in sports car racing. This, and the earlier 917, was Porsche's commitment to turbocharger applications in its cars. There is a common misconception that all 911s built between 1974 and 1989 are G-Series cars. The G-Series was only produced for the 1974 model year. It was followed by H, J, K, and so on. The model year 1974, G-Series, August 1973 to July 1974 production, the model year 1975, H Series. August 1974 to July 1975 production, the model year 1976, J Series. August 1975 to July 1976 production, the model year 1977, K Series. August 1976 to July 1977 production, the 1974 model year brought many significant changes to the 911 to meet legislative requirements around the world for both impact safety and emissions. First, the engine size was increased to 2 ccs 7 ccs achieving higher torque. Second, new impact bumpers conformed to low-speed protection requirements of U.S. regulations. Thirdly, the use of K-Jetronic Bosch fuel injection in 2 of the 3 models in the lineup of the 911 and 911S models, retaining the narrow rear arches of the old 2.4, now had a 2.7-liter engine rated at 150 PS, 110 kilowatts 150 horsepower, and 175 PS, 129 kilowatts 173 horsepower, respectively. The standard 911 version received an increase to 165 PS, 121 kilowatts 163 horsepower, for model year 1976, which meant that starting from my 1976, there was only a difference in power of 10 horsepower between the 911 and the 911S. The engine remained a K-Jetronic 2.7-liter. The 911S 2.7 engine was rated during its entire lifespan at 175 horsepower, 130 kilowatts 177 PS. The Carrera 2.7 model, built for all markets, except for the United States, used the 210 PS, 150 kilowatts 210 horsepower, RS 911-83 engine with Bosch mechanical fuel injection pump from the 1973 Carrera RS. These Carrera 2.7 MFI models were built from 1974 until 1976 and were mechanically identical to the 1973 Carrera RS. The Carrera 2.7 model, produced for the North American markets, often referred to as the Carrera 2.7 SIS, was powered by the same 2.7-liter engine as the 911S, which produced 175 PS, 129 kilowatts 173 horsepower. The initial Carrera 2.7 models had the same welded-on rear RS flares, before switching to the SC stamped style rear flares during the middle of the 1974 production year. The Carrera 2.7 Q8 held the copyright as weighted at 1,075 kilograms, 2,370 pounds, the same weight as the 1973 Carrera RS Touring. For the 1974 model year, the Carrera 2.7 was available with the ducktail rear spoiler, first introduced with the 1973 Carrera RS. In the North American markets, the ducktail was standard equipment for the Carrera. In all other markets, the ducktail was optional, except for the home German market, where the ducktail had been outlawed by the TÜV Road homologation department. This led to the introduction of the whale tail rear spoiler, available as an option on the 1974-75 Carrera 2.7 models, as well as the newly introduced 930 Turbo. The Carrera 2.7 was replaced by the Carrera 3.0 for the 1976 model year, except for a special run of 1131976 Carrera 2.7 MFI Q8 held the copyright as were built for the German market, featuring the 911-83 RS engine, with an additional 20 narrow-bodied 1976 Carrera MFI 2.7 Targas being supplied to the Belgian Gendarmerie. The 1976 Carrera 2.7 MFI Sonder models were the last mechanically fuel-injected 911 produced by Porsche and still featured the 1973 RS engine. For the 1976 model year, The 912E was produced for the U.S. market. This was a four-cylinder version of the 911 in the same manner as the 912 that had last been produced in 1969. It used the I-Series chassis powered by the Volkswagen 2.0 engine also used in the Porsche 914 for the 1973 through 1975 model years. 2,099 units were produced. The 912E was replaced by the front-engine Porsche 924 for the 1977 model year. For the 1976 model year, Porsche introduced the Carrera 3.0 with wide rear flares, optional whale tail, and a variety of other luxury options. It was available in all markets except North America. The Carrera 3.0 was fitted with a variation of the 930 Turbo's 2,994cc engine, minus the turbocharger. The engine, dubbed the 930-02, featured K-Jetronic SIS. It developed 200 PS, 150 kilowatts, 200 horsepower. In contrast to the older Carrera 2.7 MFI model's 210 PS, 150 kilowatts, 210 horsepower. The crankcase and gearbox housing were made of aluminum rather than magnesium for improved reliability. Magnesium cases were revolved for thermal expansion. Contraction issues as engines grew in displacement and heat generation also increased. The new engine, which featured bigger intake and exhaust valves, produced greater torque, allowing the Carrera 3.0 to achieve the same performance as the previous Carrera 2.7, 0 100 km per hour, 0 62 miles per hour, in 6.1 seconds, and 0 200 km per hour, 0 124 miles per hour, in 27 seconds. Both versions boasted a top speed of approximately 236 km per hour. 147 miles per hour. Weight increased marginally by 45 kilograms, 99 pounds, to 1,120 kilograms, 2,470 pounds. The 911 Carrera 3.0 was produced in both Targa, 1,125 examples produced, and Kuwait ILDA copyright, 2,566. versions. The Carrera 3.0 was available with a manual gearbox, Type 915, with 4 or 5 speeds as well as 3-speed automatic transmission, called the Sportomatic. Production totals were 3,691 manual cars and 58 Sportomatic cars. For the 1975 model year, Porsche introduced the first production turbocharged 911. Although called the 930 Turbo, 930 being its internal type number, in Europe, it was marketed as the 930 Turbo Carrera in North America. The body shape incorporated wide wheel arches to accommodate the Y205/50R15 225/50R15 Pirelli P7 tires, and a large rear spoiler often known as a whale tail on the early cars, modified from the original 1974 IROC design. They were initially fitted with a 3.0-liter engine with 260 PS, 190 kilowatts, 260 horsepower, and a 4-speed manual transmission. Production of the first 400 units qualified the 930 for the FIA Group 4 competition. The racing version, called the Porsche 934 of 1976, participated in the 24 Hours of Le Mans and other races, including battles with the BMW 3.0 CSL Batmobile. The FIA Group 5 version, called Porsche 935, evolved from the 934, fitted with a slope nose or slant nose. The 500-plus PS car was campaigned in 1976 by the factory, winning the World Championship title. Private teams went on to win many races, like Le Mans in 1979, and continued to compete successfully with the car well into the 1980s until the FIA and IMSA rules were changed. For the 1978 model year, Porsche revised the 930 with a larger 3.3-liter turbocharged engine with an intercooler rated at 300 PS, 220 kilowatts, 300 horsepower. To fit the intercooler, a newly designed T-tray tail spoiler replaced the earlier whale tail spoiler. Porsche dropped the Carrera nomenclature for the North American markets and the car was simply called the Porsche 911 Turbo worldwide. The larger engine helped reduce some of the turbo lag inherent in the earlier models. In 1989, a 5-speed manual transmission became available for the 930. The 930 was replaced in 1990 with the 964 turbos featuring the same 3.3-liter engine. There have been turbocharged variants of each subsequent generation of 911 since then. In 1978, Porsche introduced the new version of the 911. Called the 911 SC, Porsche reintroduced the SC designation for the first time since the 356 SC, as distinguished from the race engine 356 Carrera. There was no Carrera version of the 911 SC, according to modern-day Porsche literature and websites. There is no period reference to SC meaning anything. The SC stands for Super Carrera. It featured a 3.0-liter aluminum engine with Bosch K-Jetronic fuel injection and a 5-speed 915 transmission. Originally power output was 180 PS, 130 kilowatts 180 horsepower. Later 191 PS, 140 kilowatts 188 horsepower. And then in 1981 it was increased to 204 PS. 150 kilowatts 201 horsepower. The move to an aluminum engine was to regain case reliability, something missing for many years with magnesium. In 1981 a cabriolet concept car was introduced at the Frankfurt Motor Show. The convertible body design also featured four-wheel drive, although this was dropped in the production version. The first 911 cabriolet debuted in late 1982. As a 1983 model. This was Porsche's first cabriolet since the 356 of the mid-1960s. A total of 4,214 were sold in its introductory year. Despite its premium price relative to the open-top Targa, cabriolet versions of the 911 have been offered ever since. In 1979, Porsche had made plans to replace the 911 with their new 928 company flagship. Sales of the 911 remained so strong that Porsche revised its strategy and decided to inject new life into the 911 editions. 911 SC sales totaled 58,914 cars. Peter W. Schutz, CEO Porsche AG 1981–1987, wrote, "That decision to keep the 911 in the product line occurred one afternoon in the office of Dr. Helmut Bott, the Porsche operating board member responsible for all engineering and development. I noticed a chart on the wall of Professor Bott's office. It depicted the ongoing development schedules for the three primary Porsche product lines, 944, 928, and 911. Two of them stretched far into the future, but the 911 program stopped at the end of 1981. I remember rising from my chair, walking over to the chart, taking a black marker pen, and extending the 911 program bar clean off the chart. I am sure I heard a silent cheer from Professor Bott, and I knew I had done the right thing. The Porsche 911, the company icon, had been saved, and I believe the company was saved with it." The replacement for the SC series came in 1984 as the 911 3.2 Carrera, reviving the Carrera name for the first time since 1977. This was the last iteration in the original 911 series, with all subsequent models featuring new body styling and new brake, electronic, and suspension technologies. A new higher displacement engine, a 3.2-liter horizontally opposed flat six-cylinder unit, was utilized. At the time Porsche claimed it was 80% new. The new swept volume of 3,164 cc's was achieved using the 95mm, 3.7 bore, from the previous SC model, combined with the 1978 turbo 3.3 crankshaft 74.4mm, 2.9 stroke. In addition, higher domed pistons increased the compression ratio from 9.8 to 10.3 to 1, 9.5 to 1 for the U.S. market. New inlet manifold and exhaust systems were fitted. The 915 transmissions were carried over from the SC series for the first three model years. In 1987, the Carrera got a new 5-speed gearbox sourced from Getrag, model number G50 with proven Borg-Warner synchronizers. This slightly heavier version also featured a hydraulically operated clutch. With the new engine, power was increased to 207 horsepower, 154 kilowatts, 210 PS, at 5,900 revolutions per minute, for North American delivered cars, and to 237 PS, 174 kilowatts, 234 horsepower, at 5,900 revolutions per minute, for most other markets. This version of the 911 accelerated 0 to 97 km per hour, 0 to 60 miles per hour, in 5.4 seconds and had a top speed of 240 km per hour, 150 miles per hour, as measured by Autocar. Factory figures were more modest, 0 to 97 km per hour, 60 miles per hour, time of 6.3 seconds for the US version and 6.1 seconds for cars outside the American market. The brake discs were increased in size to aid in more effective heat dissipation, and improved oil-fed chain tensioners were fitted to the engine. To improve oil cooling, a fin cooler replaced the serpentine lines in the front passenger fender well. This was further improved in 1987 with the addition of a thermostatically controlled fan. Driving refinement and motor reliability were improved with an upgrade of the fuel and ignition control components to an L-Jetronic with Bosch Motronics 2DME, digital motor electronics system. An improvement in fuel efficiency was due to the DME providing a petrol cut-off on the overrun. Changes in the fuel map and chip programming from October 1986 further improved the power to 217 horsepower, 162 kilowatts, 220 PS, at 5,900 revolutions per minute, for North American delivered cars as well as for other markets mandating low emissions, like Germany. 3 basic models were available: EQA copyright, Targa, and Cabriolet. The Carrera is almost indistinguishable from the SC, with the external clue being the front fog lights that were integrated into the front valance. Only cosmetic changes were made during the production of the Carrera, with a redesigned dashboard featuring larger air conditioning vents appearing in 1986. In 1984, Porsche also introduced the M491 option, officially called the Supersport in the UK. It was commonly known as the Turbo look. It was a style that resembled the 930 Turbo with wide wheel arches and the distinctive T-tray tail. It featured the stiffer suspension shared with the Turbo and the superior turbo braking system, as well as the wider turbo wheels. Sales of the Turbo look were high for its first 2 years in the United States because the desirable 930 was not available. 3,663 were sold until 1989. The Turbo look received the official title in the sales lists as the 930 chassis option starting in the model year 1984. The order was now possible without the special wish department, as previously. At first, only available for the QA copyright, some cabriolets were still ordered with Turbo look items without having option code M491 in the internal data sheets. Cardex. For these cars, the Sanderwans department was once more responsible. From the model year 1985, the Turbo look option could be ordered on all 3 models: QA copyright, Cabriolet, and Targa, produced together with the narrow body on the same production line. The Turbo look option package contained front fenders of the 930 Turbo, which were attached the same way as the Turbo, first by welding flares to the narrow fender. Then from the model year 1986 a new, widened fender round piece of stamped steel part was developed. Side rear 930 widened fenders at the back, which were attached the same way as the Turbo, first by welding flares to the narrow body. Then from the model year 1986 a new, widened quarter panel as one-piece stamped steel part was manufactured. Porsche service information reads, "The visible from inside weld seam is omitted. The drawing part is now manufactured in one piece. The 930 front apron with black rubber elastic spoiler with integrated front driving lights. The 930 Turbo rear wing with the black rubber elastic clip of the Porsche 933.3 intercooled model. One could cancel the front spoiler and back spoiler first without a price change, however. Later the package price decreased by about 2,000 DM. Such vehicles were documented. In addition to option M470, the complete brake assembly of the 930 Turbo 3.3 is derived from the Porsche 917. Axle brackets and anti-sway bars of the Turbo 3.3, first 20 mm then 22 mm rear, as well as 23 mm in front. Fuchs magnesium with dimensions: front 7x16 and rear 9x16A with tires 205/55x16 and 245/50x16. The Ram model year 1986. The Turbo Look option package did not include Bilstein shocks, struts of the Turbo A. Instead, the Turbo Look used the Carrera Boge units, the 930 tie rods of the Turbo. There was no independent chassis number given for the M491/M490 option vehicles. In 1985, Porsche introduced the first Carrera Club Sport prototype with the identification number WP0ZZZ91ZF1000848. Later that year, the 911 Club Sports Rest of World, with the identification number WP0ZZZ91ZFS101166 was specially ordered for a Porsche driver that was particularly inspired by the CS prototype on the track. From 1987 to September 1989, Porsche decided to produce 340 units for their customers that wanted a track-inspired road car. The 911 Carrera Club Sport, CS, option M637, is a reduced-weight version of the standard Carrera purposely built for club racing. It gained engine and suspension modifications. The CS had a blueprinted engine with hollow intake valves and a higher rev limit, deletion of all power options, sunroof, except one unit, air conditioning, except 2 units, radio, rear seat, undercoating, sound insulation, rear wiper, door pocket lids, fog lamps, front hood locking mechanism, engine and luggage compartment lights, lockable wheel nuts and even the rear lid Carrera logo, all to save an estimated 70 kilograms, 150 pounds, in weight. Except for CS cars delivered to the UK, all are identifiable by the CS Club Sport decal on the left front fender and came in a variety of colors. Some special ordered. Some US CS cars did not have the decal installed by the dealer however, all have an SP stamp on the crankcase and cylinder head. The UK cars were all finished Grand Prix white with a red Carrera CS decal on each side of the car and red wheels. Although the CS was well received by the club racers, because it cost more than the standard 911, and had fewer comfort features. According to Porsche Club of America and Porsche Club Great Britain, CS registers, 21 are documented as delivered to the US in 1988 with 7 in 1989, 1 to Canada in 1988, and 53 to the United Kingdom from 1987 to 1989. In 1988, Porsche produced 875 examples of the SOAR commemorative edition 911 Carrera and Coupe, Targa, and Cabriolet variants to mark the production of the 250,000th 911.